You just time traveled thousands of years back. You're sitting around a fire with your tribe when you notice something moving just beyond the edge of the light. A glowing yellow eyes. It's watching you. You can see its eyes in the darkness, but it doesn't come any closer. You don't know it yet, but encounters like this may have eventually created one of the closest relationships between two species in history. Because that creature's descendants didn't just remain wild. But how does a wild predator become an animal that sleeps beside humans, follows them everywhere, and looks to them for affection? It probably didn't begin with humans capturing them. It may have started with them coming to us. Thousands of years ago, humans lived very differently from the way we do today. There were no supermarkets, no farms supplying endless food, no refrigerators. When people hunted an animal, they used what they could, and left the rest behind: bones, meat, organs, whatever they couldn't carry or consume, and those predators were paying attention. A human settlement represented something extremely valuable to a hungry predator, an easy meal, so some of those predators began approaching human camps. But there was a problem. Humans were dangerous. The predator that was too aggressive could be killed, and the one that was too frightened would never get close enough to benefit from the food. But there were animals somewhere in between. They were curious enough to approach, and calm enough not to attack, and those could get closer to humans without being killed. And that gave them an advantage. And you guessed it, they were wolves. Now imagine that happening over and over again. The calmer wolves keep returning. They get access to food, they survive, they have pups. And some of those pups inherit their parents' less fearful behavior. Those animals approach humans too. Then their offspring do the same, generation after generation. The wolves that could tolerate us became increasingly successful around us. No ancient human needed to understand genetics. No one needed to decide, we're going to create dogs. The process could happen naturally. The wolves were essentially moving themselves toward domestication. And we have an experiment that shows just how powerful this kind of selection can be. In the Soviet Union, geneticist Dmitry Belyaev began an unusual experiment involving silver foxes. He wasn't trying to make them prettier. He wasn't trying to create pets. He selected the foxes based on one simple characteristic: how comfortable they were around humans. The least aggressive and least fearful foxes were bred together. Then their offspring were tested. The friendliest were bred again, and the process continued for generations. Something remarkable happened. The foxes didn't just become easier to handle. Some began developing floppy ears, different coat patterns, more juvenile-looking faces, changes in their reproductive behavior, and they became increasingly interested in humans. They wanted attention, they sought contact. By selecting behavior, researchers were unintentionally changing the animals' bodies as well. And this experiment gives us an important clue about what may have happened with wolves. But eventually, humans began realizing that these animals weren't just hanging around for food. They could actually be useful. Imagine living thousands of years ago. You don't have night vision cameras, you don't have alarms, you don't have motion sensors. But a dog can hear something moving outside the camp long before you can. It can smell animals you can't detect. It can follow a scent. It can help locate prey. And it can warn the group when something dangerous is nearby. The relationship became increasingly valuable to both sides. The wolves received food and protection. Humans gained an animal with abilities that complemented their own. And slowly, a predator became an ally. But dogs didn't simply become less aggressive. Something much more interesting happened. They became exceptionally good at understanding humans. A dog can follow where you're pointing. It can pay attention to your face. It can recognize familiar voices. And it can learn what certain human behaviors mean. This is unusual. Wolves raised around humans don't naturally communicate with us in quite the same way. Dogs seem to have developed a special sensitivity to human social signals. And the relationship may have gone even deeper. When humans and dogs interact positively, both can experience changes in oxytocin, a hormone involved in social bonding. In a sense, thousands of years of living together may have changed both sides of the relationship. And then there's something almost unfair about dogs: their faces. Look at a dog when it wants something. Those raised eyebrows, those wide eyes. That expression that somehow makes you feel guilty for not giving it whatever it's asking for. Dogs have a facial muscle involved in producing that characteristic puppy eye expression that wolves lack or possess to a much lesser degree. And that may have mattered, because animals that could communicate with humans more effectively could receive more attention. More attention could mean more food. More food could mean better survival. Over countless generations, traits that helped dogs connect with humans could become increasingly common. Eventually, dogs became more than animals living near human settlements. They became part of human society. And some of the strongest evidence isn't about hunting or farming, it's about burial. Archaeologists have discovered ancient graves where dogs were buried alongside humans. Think about that. These people lived in a world where survival was difficult, and yet, when one of these animals died, someone took the time to bury it. That tells us the relationship had changed. The dog wasn't simply useful anymore, it was a companion, a member of the group, and humans eventually began taking the selection process into their own hands. Once we had dogs, we started choosing which characteristics we wanted to preserve. Some were better hunters, some were better at guarding, others were useful for herding, some could pull loads or travel long distances, and others were simply easier and more pleasant to live with. Humans kept breeding the animals that performed these roles best. Over time, those differences became more extreme, and eventually, we ended up with the extraordinary variety of dogs we have today. A tiny Chihuahua, a massive Great Dane, a greyhound built for speed, a bulldog with a completely different body. They look almost nothing alike, but trace their ancestry far enough back, and you're eventually looking at the same animal, the wolf. And that's what makes the history of dogs so fascinating. We usually imagine domestication as something humans did to animals. We captured them, controlled them, bred them, changed them, but dogs may have started differently. The first step may have been a wolf deciding that staying near humans was worth the risk. Humans tolerated those wolves. The wolves provided certain benefits. The humans provided food. And gradually, both species changed. So the next time your dog follows you from one room to another, or waits by the door for you to come home, remember how strange that relationship really is. Somewhere in the distant past, a wild wolf approached a human camp looking for food. That encounter was repeated, then repeated again, and over thousands of years, the distance between the two species disappeared. The predator became a companion, the competitor became an ally, and eventually, the animal that once watched our ancestors from the darkness became the animal lying beside us in the light. That's how the wolf became the dog.